Hello everyone, it's John Byrne with Poets and Quants. Welcome to our MBA Watch profile of the week, sponsored by mbaMission. We have today Harold Simansky of mbaMission to assess our candidate. Hi Harold, how you doing?
Hi John, how are you?
Very good, thank you. So we have a guy who drops out of IIT in India and goes to law school, one of the three top law schools in India, then joins one of the biggest law firms. He launches a startup. Unfortunately, because of COVID apparently, he couldn't get funding. So he calls himself Mr. Failed Startup Founder. He has a 740 GMAT, a 4.0 GPA, and he's 26 years of age, and he has very high ambitions. He's aiming for Stanford, Harvard, or Berkeley Haas. Harold, what do you make of this guy?
You know, whenever I see someone as educated with having as much experience as he has in the startup world, being a lawyer, clearly a smart guy across every dimension, the question always is okay, why business school? And frequently in these situations, you have folks talking about, well, I want to go into a startup. He was already in a startup. Well, I want to work internationally. He was already working internationally. So the question that I always tell people, think about skill development. This idea here of, okay, you've been a lawyer. A lot of great skills developed there. You've been in a startup. Obviously, you learned on the fly. So what do you still need to learn? What can Stanford, Harvard, or Haas teach you now that the world hasn't taught you?
Harold, he does mention a few things that he's expecting from business school. And the first one, oddly, founder credentials, knowledge of financial projections, investor presentations and business plans, and preferably some entrepreneurship experience. So perhaps he's also thinking of using the MBA experience as an incubator.
I think to myself, really, again, in the role of admissions committee, why don't you take $250,000 and try something yourself? You've already done it once before. How much have you learned there? And then I also, in parallel to that, I think to myself, okay, he wants to learn financial projections. It sounds like presentation, those sort of skills. Again, he's a smart guy. He could go on YouTube and figure out how to do financial projections. He could go to Toastmasters and learn about presenting. So when I see someone like that, I think to myself, okay, look back in time. Why did your startup fail? What were those things? And I'm sure they didn't fail because of wrong spreadsheets. Clearly they failed. Either his strategy was wrong, or his leadership skills were wrong, or just good old-fashioned organizational behavior or missing in industry. That's some of the things you can learn in business school. Stanford would love to teach this guy about leadership. Absolutely. MIT, God, there's so much. It can teach them about what it is to have a CEO presence. Obviously, Haas can teach you other soft skills. And clearly, that's what I would want him to talk about. Financial projections, come on.
What do you think his shot is if, in fact, he changes his sort of approach and adopts what you're suggesting?
Obviously, these are hard schools to get into. We always know that. I would probably give his shot. Listen, at Stanford, it's a little bit like buying a lottery ticket. They're only accepting whatever is 7%, 6%, whatever it is. But you know what? He is credible. What I would say at that point is, let's say 20%. Let's say at Harvard, a little bit higher than that. Again, Harvard will like the global perspective. I think that that's certainly a piece of it. Harvard would like the fact he failed once before. They don't necessarily see the profile of someone who failed. And the reality is I like that. So maybe it's up to 25%. And Haas, it's a funny school. Out of all the folks that I work with, I say he's a Harvard type, he's a Wharton type. Haas is always a head scratcher for me, which cuts both ways. The reality is that Haas loves the soft skills. They love thinking about leadership. They think about what does a team dynamic look like. So if he uses that argument, I think he has a pretty good shot at Haas. Let's call it, again, 30 to 40%.
Now, should he be applying to other schools?
If he's only thinking M7 schools, he should be applying to Booth. Booth has an organizational behavior faculty. They think about how people think, and I think that could be an interesting place for him. University of Washington Foster, wonderful place to be. I think that would be terrific. Carnegie Mellon, every tech company, if he decides to go tech, every tech company right now has a presence in Pittsburgh. So I think that would be a couple of choices as well. Clearly, there's a ton of schools out there. I can name 1,000 of them, but I think he could certainly. I think he should certainly think about how important money is to him, how important scholarship is to him, and that would be, I think, a very good lens to look through.
Now, Harold, in the beginning of our conversation, you made me believe that you thought he shouldn't go and get an MBA, that instead he should use his money to fund his next startup. Am I mistaken, or was that based on how he's presenting himself?
I think that's based on how he presented himself. An argument like, I failed in my startup. It was quite the learning experience. I now recognize what I still need to learn, and the best way of accelerating that learning is business school. And those are things like leadership, organizational behavior, some strategy there probably, greater global perspective, again, what he wants to do.
All right, Harold, that's really good advice. Thank you very much.
Of course, of course.
Okay, I think the takeaway here too, as Harold mentioned, is, the first thing he says he wants from business school are founder credentials. Well, that's not going to make an admissions committee accept you. They want to know that you're really interested in the things that Harold is talking about: leadership, strategy, filling in the business basics to make it more likely that your startup will succeed. So that's an important part of his approach. And I think, applying to Stanford, Harvard, and Berkeley, those are three schools with among the lowest acceptance rates in the world for MBA programs. Might be smart to apply to a few more schools. Harold mentioned prominently Chicago Booth, Carnegie Mellon. I think those are two really good options, and they give you some protection if, in fact, Stanford, Harvard, and Berkeley just don't bite on this one. All right. This is John Byrne with Poets and Quants. You've been watching our MBA Profile of the Week, sponsored by MBA Mission.